get you an MCN shirt. I'm telling you, put it on the table. It's fine.
Camera in here. So y'all know how you're going to enter walking village game. Jay, it's a good lesson.
Does that look alright on there?
No. It's like, tilt it to the right. You want it a little more towards Jay.
A little bit.
Have it all focused right
There.
Y'all know you have a pen.
Alright, give me any day now. I'm in that camera for you.
Go and bring you.
Yo, why is it frozen?
What's that a picture of? For those who know? Disqualified. What is that?
Okay.
Yo, but no, what's that?
What's that?
What's that? No, that.
Okay, so.
No, I like the one where he's like trying to find.
That's a bad picture. So nice.
Hey everybody, good evening. Good evening. Welcome to First of All We Vote, a George Mason University presidential debate. My name is Adam Hunter. I'm here on behalf of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. This is our First of All We Vote initiative. My name is Gabriel Hamilton. This mic isn't as going as well as we thought it was going to be, so I'm going to speak like this. Sorry. Gabriel Hamilton, member of Iota Alpha chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We chose to set up this event just to get the campus familiarized with all of the platforms of each party. A lot of people have watched the political debates on TV, and a lot of people already have a preconceived notion on who they want to vote for, but a lot of the time they're not informed. So we chose to have this event to get everybody informed so we can have good dialogue and also have your input as well on what you think the topic should be brought to and what, basically so we can learn more before we go out and vote on the 6th. So we want to thank you all for coming out and hopefully you'll have a good time. And at this time, we would like to introduce our moderator. His name is Shane Smith. You can give him a round of applause.
All right. Welcome to the First of All We Vote presidential debate. My name is Shane Smith, Mason Vote's executive editor, and I am joined next to me by Phil Abruscato, my trusted timekeeper for this evening. Before we begin, I would like to introduce the students debating, and if you could join me in welcoming the GMU College Republicans and the GMU Democrats. Welcome to all of you. As you get seated, if we could just have you introduce yourselves briefly, we will start with the College Republicans.
Hello, my name is Michael Jordan.
My name is Michael Garobio, Vice Chairman.
My name is Joey Taylor.
Speak up.
My name is Joey Taylor. I'm Joe Taylor. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Megan Adamczewski.
I'm Michael Abu Savage. Really weird name. I'm Carl Townsend.
All right, welcome once again, guys and lady. Before we begin tonight, we want to just go over the rules quickly. The format, I will ask a question to one of the two teams. Whoever I ask the question is directed to, they will have 2 minutes to answer, and then the other team has 1 minute per response. We will then move on to a next question, which may be similar to the previous or on a different topic, and I will let you know if we're changing topics drastically. And we will alternate teams who answer, depending on the coin flip that we had. The College Republicans won the coin toss and decided to let the College Democrats start with their opening statement. So, College Democrats, please take it away with your opening statement.
First of all, we wanted to thank student government, Mason Votes, and the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity for hosting us here tonight. We know they put a lot of work into hosting this event and making it great for all of you, so we just wanted to say thank you. As we are the College Democrats, we are here tonight to represent President Obama, Tim Kaine for the Senate seat, and Jerry Connolly for the 11th Congressional District seat, which is the district that Mason falls into. On Tuesday, all the eligible voters in this room are going to have the opportunity to go to the polls and choose between two very different visions for the future. We advocate the Democratic ticket because we believe that there's been proven leadership on our ticket and policies that have moved our country forward and are going to continue to move us forward into the next 4 years. We're advocating for the Democratic ticket because the Democrats are making the necessary investments in education, in infrastructure, in health care, and in other domestic and foreign investments so that we can actually have a country that's moving forward and is improving. In contrast, we believe that the Republican ticket is inconclusive with policies and is including policies that have failed in the past and belong in the past. We're honored to share the stage with the College Republicans tonight, and we're looking forward to an insightful and interesting debate. So with that.
Well, like it was said before, we're the College Republicans. We'd first like to thank Mason Votes, George Mason Student Government, and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated for hosting this event. And I think what you're going to hear tonight is you're going to hear two very, very different approaches to the future that America needs to take. One approach relies completely on government dependency, further unemployment, less take-home pay, and uncertainty about the direction that we are going in. When Barack Obama took office nearly 4 years ago, he promised a lot of things. As candidate, we had no record. We had no record to examine. We had no way of finding out who he was. But now, 4 years later, as president, he has a record, and we can look at something and point to something and say, this is not the direction that we want our country to go into. The College Democrats and Barack Obama says that we are going forward if we re-elect him in the Democrat ticket. With Mitt Romney, we're going forward, but you're being forewarned about what's happening in our country. The low unemployment, the less take-home pay, and the uncertainty that things like Obamacare and the new regulations they have passed will surely bring upon our great country. So we are representing the Republican ticket, Mitt Romney, George Allen, and Chris Perkins. Thank you.
And with that, I forgot to mention the disclaimer. As both parties have stated, the arguments made today are not the personal views of the students debating. They are the views and platforms of President Obama and Governor Mitt Romney. So just throwing that out there. And also for those watching and in the audience, if you have any questions, please tweet them to, tweet your question using the hashtag GMU debate. And with that, the coin toss was won by the College Republicans, and they decided to let the College Democrats have the first question. So let's begin. In the recent wake of Hurricane Sandy, that has ravaged much parts of the East Coast, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut being affected the most, the issue of climate change has come up a lot recently in the media. It was not discussed much at all, I believe, in any of the presidential debates, and there's been criticism on both sides that it hasn't been talked about recently as well by either candidate. So my first question is, what is the stance of President Obama and what is the stance of Governor Mitt Romney on climate change?
Hello. First mishap of today. Thank you very much. Yes, President Obama has made it quite clear global warming is an issue of our century. And to solve this, we need clean energy, new way forward, and a better way to actually solve the issue at hand. Now, you can see the problem with New York and the disaster that caused, how bad the infrastructure is. New York was never meant to handle that type of weather, that type of rainfall. That's why you see what you see, there's pictures, over flooding in the subway systems, because this wasn't an issue. Sea levels wasn't that high 100 years ago when they designed the public transportation of New York. Now, I would like to say that, respect to Mitt Romney, he has been quite silent on the issue. And whether or not this is a way of a leader to go forward or not, but still. Thank you.
I think it's also very startling that a presidential candidate would have displayed such ignorance during the Republican primary and essentially say that he would cut funding for FEMA. He would talk about privatizing it, and he would talk about turning it over to the states. But when you have in a country such a massive problem, flooding that affects not only northern parts of Virginia, parts of Delaware, Maryland, parts of New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, this is going to take a larger, more organized effort. And we've actually seen, to the chagrin of many Republicans, that Barack Obama has been receiving some praise as of late regarding his efforts, working with the states and coordinating with many governors, including the infamous or famous Chris Christie. All right, thank you very much.
You guys have 1 minute. Okay.
Well, first of all, bad weather is nothing new, and this was really not a normal hurricane. It ran into a cold front and a nor'easter. We saw a hurricane like this over 80 years ago, the Long Island Express, right? So we're not going to call this, or this can't be attributed just to global warming, right? Second of all, we both agree steps need to be taken to address climate change, but the question is, how do we get there? So far, the president's proposed, let's move to hybrid cars. The problem is if you converted the entire auto fleet in the U.S. to just hybrids, that would be 0.5% of what needs to be done to bring carbon levels down. It will take a serious effort. That's something we have not seen from this president. There's been no leadership on this issue for the past 4 years.
Okay. So moving into more recent news, obviously, as you both parties are aware, the final jobs report before the election came out today, showing 171,000 jobs created in October, 148,000 jobs were created in September, up from its original forecast of 114,000, and the August number was 192,000, up from its 142,000 jobs that the Labor Department originally had stated that it was created. My question to the college Republicans: how will Mitt Romney? He's talked about creating 12 million jobs. How is he going to go about doing that? And do you see the latest news on the economic front as something encouraging?
You're right, 172,000 jobs were created the past month. The problem is population growth is over 300,000 a month, right? Unemployment ticked up from 7.8% to 7.9%. We were promised when the stimulus was passed that at this point we would be at 5.2%. We're 9 million jobs behind. Now, in regards to creating jobs, Mitt Romney has a 5-point plan. We're going... First off, we're going to close tax loopholes. simplify the rates, or simplify the code, bring down the rates, both at the corporate and the individual level, but in a responsible way that doesn't add to the deficit. Then we're going to pursue new trade agreements, specifically in Latin America, and we're going to crack down on China if and when they cheat. Let's see, what are the others?
We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. What does that say to an employer? You can only employ so much as long as you play by this. Why don't we allow businesses to invest in not only their own capital, but in human capital, to create not only an employee that can be able to take home the fruits of their labor, but to be able to invest in their families and to invest in what makes them a good American and what produces a good economy. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. That does not make us competitive. Lower the rate. Make sure that companies can bring home their money. And also, why do we even have a corporate tax rate? With Mitt Romney, we address it, we look at it, we lower it, and we allow companies to invest in themselves, to end corporate welfare, and to invest in human capital.
And I think it's important to mention that this is not just a Republican or a Democrat issue. Both these issues have persisted for the past 20 years and beyond. This is an issue that is going to need Republicans and Democrats both coming to the table. And the one person running for president who has done that is Mitt Romney, not Barack Obama. He's never had to work with a Republican, and the past 4 years have shown exactly the results of that. Thank you.
You guys have 1 minute.
Mitt Romney has his 5-point plan, and he talks about it quite frequently. His 5-point plan and the 12 million jobs that he plans on creating. Now, 12 million jobs sounds really good, and there's really nothing wrong with creating 12 million jobs. But the figure is not Mitt Romney's. It's Moody Analytics. They predicted that the economy over the next 4 years would already create 12 million new jobs. So let's think about it. If you're going to say that you're going to create 12 million new jobs, then why do you even need to be elected if 12 million new jobs are already going to be coming about? It's a foolish proposal.
And one important thing to realize about the job reports is that when Obama took office in January of 2009, the economy was hemorrhaging jobs. Jobs were being lost every single period. But now we're seeing steady growth.
700,000 a month.
And we've seen steady increase in jobs for 31 months since Obama has been in office. So obviously, while those job numbers aren't as great as we'd like them to be, they are improving.
All right, sticking with the economy, how does your candidate, President Barack Obama, plan on tackling the deficit facing the United States?
Regarding deficit, the president has, I feel like I'm just a broken record. The president has talked about balancing our budget through a more balanced approach by, yes, making cuts where we can, making reforms where we can, but also maintaining the fiscal solvency of things like Social Security, things like Medicare, but also raising taxes on the wealthiest among us. Once again, to the chagrin of Republicans, there was a report that came out from the Congressional Research Service Center, and essentially in their report, they told Congress that there in fact was no correlation between lower tax rates and increased economic growth or increased job growth. This is just a red herring from the Republican Party, and it sounds nice, and to a certain extent it sounds logical. But the fact of the matter is that wealthy Americans, wealthy Americans tend to sit on their wealth more, and they tend to not outsource their money, but essentially implant it overseas, such as Mitt Romney. So I think it's important that we talk about having this balanced approach. Once again, as I outlined earlier, cuts where we can, reforms where we can, and also bringing down or changing tax rates. And along those lines, Republicans recently have been bragging about how much they've cut from the budget. In reality, they've managed to look at 15% of the budget and, boast about it, brag about it, talk about how much they've done, but it's 15% of the budget. There's a remaining 85% that is comprised of Medicare, Social Security, and defense. And not to mention the Affordable Care Act, which actually cuts the deficit over the next 10 years by $109 billion.
Sorry, say that again?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, I asked him what President Obama's plan was to cut the deficit facing the United States.
Well, the truth is he doesn't have a plan. When he was running 4 years ago, he promised he'd cut the deficit in half. Instead, he doubled it. And the CBO projects trillion-dollar deficits for the next 4 years. Right? We're looking at a $20 trillion debt that will eat away our standard of living and destroy our country. So when it comes to deficit reduction, why Republicans have only been able to get 15% is we've been having to deal with their party blocking our proposed reforms. Next Tuesday, we have an opportunity to change that. In 4 more days, we will start leading this country down the road to fiscal solvency.
Governor Romney has also endorsed what is being stalled in the Senate by the Democratic Party and Majority Leader Harry Reid that passed bipartisan in the House of audit the Federal Reserve. In fact, Governor Romney has even suggested of taking back $1.7 trillion in bonds, $1.7 trillion that was stolen from Americans and given to foreign central banks. That is despicable.
Moving on to the issue of education, another issue that was rarely touched on in the presidential debates. How does your candidate plan to improve the quality of the American education system?
Well, it's quite simple. We want to offer more choices to both parents and students. Unfortunately, the PTA doesn't have a union, and a lot of progress has been blocked by the teachers' unions. Sadly, when President Obama ran 4 years ago, he had some pretty good ideas on education reform. He has not pursued those very strongly, and I suspect that's because of the teachers' unions' ownership of the Democratic Party. We're going to offer the kind of choices that will improve education through competition.
Just to touch up a little bit more on what Mr. Taylor said, it's all about choice. If you redefine the Title I funds that go to the schools and make them portable so that you say, okay, in this school district you get, this amount of $1,000 per child. And that child can, instead of being forced to go to one school, can take that money and take it to a private school and apply that to a private tuition so that families, even in low-income areas, can afford things like private schools and charter schools, then what you do is you create competition within the educational field. The reason why this isn't happening is because teacher unions don't want it to happen. It's not in their best interest for competition. A great example of this is right over here in D.C., where we spend more per child than anywhere else in the world. Everywhere else in the country. And yet they have the worst performing schools. There actually is currently a program similar to what Mr. Romney is proposing that was proposed in D.C., and Barack Obama blocked the funds with the help of the Democrat Party. This is not the kind of leadership that we need. I want a president that answers to the American people, not teachers' unions. And I think moving forward, we need to be forewarned about who Barack Obama serves.
On the issue of the voucher systems that our opponents are talking about, the reason that the Obama administration and teachers are against the voucher system program is because it doesn't focus on teacher performance. It gives students options, that's true, but it doesn't actually focus on improving teachers. Now, our opponents said that they thought the Obama administration had some great ideas in 2008 about improving education, but that they haven't pursued them. And that's blatantly incorrect. So the Obama administration imposed their own education program called Race to the Top. And currently in 2012, that program has yielded improvements in 46 different states. It's been an incredibly successful program because it's focused on teacher performance. It's focused on making sure that teachers are being held to certain standards, are improving their standards, as opposed to No Child Left Behind, which was just focused on flat test score standards. So Race to the Top has been incredibly successful and is an incredibly important cornerstone of what the president is going to do in his next 4 years in office. So we think that his education policy is definitely moving us forward.
We were addressed. We'd like to respond.
Yeah, there were some facts that were not.
All right, 15 seconds.
Thank you.
our opponents say that, yes, it is true that Barack Obama has spent billions of dollars in 46 states of this country, but the difference between Barack Obama's plan and Mitt Romney's plan is, where did that money go? They say it went toward helping teacher performance. Teacher performance is another word for teacher unions. They went to the teacher unions. They did not go to the classrooms or to help the children. And that's what Romney's plan specifically says, is that it's about competition, and competition improves teacher performance. Thank you.
Since that was about 20 seconds, we're going to have to give him 20 seconds as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Shane.
What I think I said pretty clearly when I was talking about Race to the Top is that it improved teacher performance. It didn't improve the teachers' unions. What it did was look at teaching standards throughout the country and improving those standards, making sure that teacher performance was a highlight. The whole point of Race to the Top was focusing on that as opposed to just race.
All right, thank you. Just a quick side note, if you have, in the audience, if you have a question, please see the student government kiosk off to my right. Your right as well, yeah. Thank you. Sticking with education, under President Obama's administration, the average cost of a four-year public school education has increased by 21.7% when adjusted for inflation. What would Governor Romney do, or what would President Obama do, to build off any successes that he has had, or correct the failures that he has had in trying to help states lower the cost of tuition for college students?
So President Obama has been really focused in his four-year term on making college more affordable for students. And some of the cornerstones of that plan was, first of all, he focused on Pell Grants, which helped low-income students be able to afford college. And he made sure that Pell Grant funding was protected and actually tried to double that funding, whereas Governor Romney's plan is to reduce it in order to help reduce the deficit. And while we can all agree that that is an important goal, we don't believe that that's something that should be done on the backs of hardworking students. Obama has also focused on giving tax credits to students and their families who are going to college to, again, make college more affordable. And he, in a bipartisan effort with the Republican House and the Democratic Senate this summer, made sure that interest on federal student loans wasn't doubled. And that's something I know affects a lot of us. And that was a really great bipartisan effort. I think the Republicans and the Democrats did a great job on that. So President Obama has definitely taken big steps in trying to make college more affordable, and I think that shows not only leadership, but bipartisan leadership.
I just want to hit on Republicans talking about competition within education, and I certainly don't disagree that that's, it's a bad idea, but to a certain extent, I also think it's a red herring. Many foreign countries, particularly in Europe and other countries such as South Korea, which are currently beating us in math and in science, these countries don't necessarily focus on competition. They focus on professionalizing the profession. They demand more from their teachers. A recent statistic I watched on Fareed Zakaria talked about improving the American education system, and said that essentially that it is competitive over in Europe, and that for every one teaching position, there are 10 people who apply, and only one person gets that job. Here in the United States, it's 5 people will get a teaching position. So we don't disagree that it's a red herring, but we don't disagree that it is a solution. Sorry, whatever. I'll just shut up. Lost my train of thought.
All right. So a lot was just discussed. First, they mentioned that competition is not necessarily a bad thing, but we need to address what teachers do. And I bring it back to my main point. What's blocking that are the teachers' unions who are backing the president's campaign. Look at Chicago. They tried to hire the standards and professionalize the profession, and the teachers' unions went on strike. Next. We got like 90 seconds.
Well, when it comes to the rising tuition costs, the Pell Grants are counterproductive because they're increasing the competition among students to get in, but makes it more accessible. Our main point is this stuff is best handled at the state level, not at the federal level. Each state has their own particular circumstances, and we feel that they're the best ones to address that.
If I could, I want to respond to... Oh, are they done? No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We'll give you 10 seconds.
Our main question with this, as with any government program that Mitt Romney wants to look at, is what is the problem with turning the power over to the states and their respective people? Everyone here, everyone, do you want a say in your education, or do you want 435 bureaucrats in Washington to decide for you?
Oh, yes. I just wanted to touch on the Chicago teacher strike.
Okay, I'll give you 15 seconds, and then we'll give you 15. Since we did it for the last one.
The issue was over the gross proportion of the teacher-student proportion. I think it was one teacher for every 40 students. I also think it was over just essentially tying their pay to standardized tests, which seems a little counterproductive. Yeah.
15 seconds, please.
There were a lot of issues that led to the teachers' union strike. But I think it's important to realize that those teachers are the highest paid teachers in the country. If they have higher class size, it's not because of anything that the school was doing. It was because the teachers' unions were forcing them to pay individual teachers so much money per individual instead of hiring more teachers. So at the end of the day, it was not anything the Republicans did. It was the liberals and the teachers' unions.
Thank you. Sticking with more domestic policy issues, we're going to move to the all-important issue of health care in America. This one is for the college Republicans. Lost my turn up. There we go. What is your candidate's view on improving the American healthcare system? Specifically, how will Mitt Romney's healthcare plan improve the health of our country and lower costs?
Right. Well, by lowering costs, once again, it brings us back to the issue of competition. We want there to be more competition. That's not happening with the way our healthcare system is currently structured. One of the big problems we have is it seems like medical devices aren't subject to Moore's Law, which is that the costs for technology halve every 18 months relative to their power. We aren't seeing that there because the incentive structure in that market is so bad. But as far as bringing costs down for individuals, the biggest thing that Mitt Romney's healthcare plan will do for that is to allow people to buy insurance over state lines, which will just vastly increase the number of providers that you have to choose from.
The other question, too, I'll briefly touch on Medicare, is if Obamacare is so great and going to help everybody here, why did they take $200 billion from Medicare that's given to seniors, to veterans, people who fought for this country? He took $200 billion and took it from the Medicare Advantage Trust Fund. And after that, they spent $8.3 billion to cover it up and postpone those cuts. Cuts to 13 million, 23% of those on Medicare Advantage. He took their money so he could postpone the cuts to make sure that they don't see the cuts until after the election. You can put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. We like to call that theft.
You good? Yep. All right. You guys have a minute to respond.
Just to start off, that current statistic is not true. That was actually posted on the Republican website. That is actually incorrect on the part.
I think it's really funny, obviously hasn't been brought up yet, but Republicans frequently talk about repealing Obamacare. Keep in mind that Republicans are running the guy who implemented Obamacare on a state level. And that's a perfectly valid claim. I understand, individual mandate, states' rights, yada, yada, yada. But the model is eerily similar. In fact, there are several members of Mitt Romney's original healthcare advisory staff that actually came on board to President Barack Obama's staff while the healthcare law was being negotiated and the plan itself was being compiled. I think it's also really interesting. Republicans frequently talk about tort reform. Okay. Cliffhanger. Yeah.
All right, we've done it for the last two questions, so we'll go 15 seconds.
The statistic about the cuts to Medicare Advantage, I work for the committee that has actually discovered those cuts, I'd like to think I know what I'm talking about. You do not take money and can say you spend it twice, and then take more people's money and try and hide it so you can get reelected.
Well, not only that, but when President Obama was running almost 4 years ago, he ran on the platform that he wasn't going to raise anybody's taxes under $250,000. The Supreme Court said that Obamacare, because the only way it's constitutional is that if it's a tax. That is the largest tax increase on the middle class in American history. And so I don't understand how you're going to run on cutting taxes and the deficit when you're not doing either.
We gave them 30 seconds, so you guys have those.
I answered that.
Regarding the rating of Medicare, I think it's really funny that Republicans are going to be bringing this up. Paul Ryan brought this up frequently during the vice presidential debate and has been bringing it up on the campaign trail. He talks about the $716 billion figure that Obama takes out of Medicare. Oddly enough, it is the same exact figure that is found in the Paul Ryan budget plan and his reforms to Medicare, or I should say his distortions to Medicare. Okay.
All right, we're going to switch over to some questions that have been given to us by the audience. So let's switch over to foreign policy for a little bit. I believe it's the Democrats, you guys. What is the greatest foreign policy issue facing the country in the next 4 years? And how do you believe President Obama will approach that issue?
I think probably the most pressing matter regarding foreign policy would definitely be Iran and Iran's nuclear ambitions. The Obama administration has worked with the United Nations and passed incredibly, incredibly harsh economic sanctions on their country. So we find it important to continue with these sanctions. And now over to Carl.
Thank you. We also like to acknowledge the increasing rise of China in the sea. And although we do not see them as a fully militarized threat, we do see them as competition and for actually more of a domestic things to our trade. And but thanks to this administration, and I know that Romney likes to talk about cracking down on China, but this administration has launched more trade suits against China and won than any other administration in the past 30 years.
And to move back to the point about Iran real quickly, one thing that we really one thing the president has really been advocating is taking a smart approach to dealing with a nuclear Iran. Obviously, that's an incredibly huge threat, and it's something that's been talked about in the presidential debates. Obviously, Israel is our strongest ally in the Middle East, and we want to be able to support them. But the president has made it clear that he doesn't want to unnecessarily go to war with Iran because that's going to be a huge burden on when we're trying to reduce our debt, and it's going to be a national security issue. So the president has definitely advocated that if there comes the necessity where we need to go to some type of conflict with Iran or we need to support Israel, we'll do it, but that we can use sanctions and diplomacy and other methods before it's absolutely necessary to take that next step.
The greatest threat to our national security is not from without but within. It's our national debt. It's over $16 trillion now. That's larger than the entire U.S. economy. And when we have to start paying interest on that, it looks to eat our growth rates. So dealing with that is the most important issue facing America's security.
Our question, though, in regards to Iran, if President Obama is so passionate about making sure Iran hasn't gotten a nuclear weapon, he has not once since 2009 met with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. In fact, he's even come out and said that he wants to move Israel and work with Israel to move back to its 1967 borders. That would leave Israel only 5 to 9 miles wide. Who is President Obama to tell Israel how they should run their country? We are very blessed to have a stable democracy and to have 49 bases around Iran so we can effectively police Iran to make sure that their gameplay with a nuclear weapon and their threat to go after Big Satan and Little Satan is done.
15
Yes,
seconds.
please.
15 seconds.
Regarding our relationship with Israel, in fact, the day before, I believe it was the second presidential debate, the United States and Israel were actually conducting military exercises. Now, I know that doesn't seem like a very... Okay. Can we get a little bit more time?
Yeah. Really. Thank you.
Yes, so we did these joint military exercises, and while it sounds like it's purely symbolic, it really is. It shows that the United States does in fact have Israel's back. Now, regarding the 1967 borders, I believe there were several past presidents that have also advocated for it. I'm sorry, they've gotten a little leeway.
It's been 30 seconds for both. So we're going to stop right now. You guys have...
Right. The other foreign policy issue we're facing in the next 4 years is the increased likelihood of a terrorist attack because we've made so many enemies around the world with our aggressive foreign policy. We can't kill our way out of this mess. We have got to come up with a better solution than drone strikes and invasions.
I also think it's very interesting that the Democrats and Barack Obama tries to persuade everyone into thinking that he has this great relationship with Israel when he's never met with Bibi Netanyahu, nor when he... Okay. There's just never enough time.
Yeah, sorry. We think sticking with foreign policy, and you brought up the issue of the national debt, something that's really going to impact the state of Virginia are these sequestration cuts. So what has, how have you seen President Obama's handling of the sequestration that's coming up at the end of the year, and how would Mitt Romney, if president, handle such an issue?
The problem with the way that these cuts were made is it was sort of a quid pro quo. Both parties in D.C. had to take a haircut, if you will, on one of their favorite issues when they passed the deal that led to sequestration. We'd like to do it in a much more balanced way, looking at weapon systems that we don't really need that much, and some other things, but we want to do a more thorough audit of the Pentagon to look at ways we can cut out wasteful spending there. We just feel like with the sequestration, it's kind of slash and burn. You're taking an axe to the defense budget instead of a scalpel.
The other thing too that's not discussed in sequestration is why in this plan are they cutting? They're cutting benefits from veterans, people who have fought for this country, people who were injured by this country, serving in the highest honor. I don't know about any of y'all here. I hope you have veterans in your family, and bless them. My grandfather fought in the Air Force of this country, served 2 tours in Korea, and served in Vietnam. And one of the most heartbreaking days of his life was when his veterans' benefits were cut because he felt used. There is absolutely no authority under any presidency, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, to cut from our veterans.
We definitely agree that sequestration is not an option that we want to have to reach. As Mike was saying, it's going to have drastic cuts to a lot of programs that are absolutely essential, including the VA, including a lot of discretionary spending programs that benefit a lot of Americans. President Obama, the Obama administration released a plan to deal with sequestration, and it focused on balanced cuts for defense and non-defense discretionary spending, so that we could look at the budget, see what programs, as they said, we need to trim and really focus on. And we advocate the Obama administration plan because in contrast, the House Republican plan focused on less defense spending and drastically cutting non-defense discretionary spending. And we believe that a more balanced approach between non-defense discretionary and defense spending will be much more effective and will preserve the essential domestic programs that we still need to maintain in the country.
The 30 seconds didn't use.
Yeah.
All right. So when we talk about where these cuts are going, and Mike briefly touched on it about the Veterans Affairs, the VA. Has anyone ever dealt with the VA? Yeah. How long do you wait on the phone before you get somebody to talk to address your issue? No, the actual average is about an hour. If you, and that's actually from the Veterans Association's website itself. And so what Barack Obama said, and what they're talking about, is they're saying we're not cutting any funds to veterans. They're just cutting funds to the actual administrators who run the Veterans Affairs. So it is a huge cut.
Regarding defense spending, once again, as President Obama pointed out, Mitt Romney is asking for an additional $2 trillion in additional defense spending over the next 10 years. And that's also going along with this $4.8 trillion tax plan, across the board cuts, and then the continuation of the Bush tax cuts, which is an additional $1 trillion. And then all of a sudden he's concerned about the debt. $7.8 trillion. $8 trillion. And then he, once again, and he talks about his concern about the debt. When you have a proposal like that, the math doesn't add up.
Stop you there. Moving on to another domestic policy question. What would each candidate's plan be to help the offspring of illegal immigrants in regard to education? And I believe this one is for the Democrats.
The offspring.
The children, the offspring.
Yeah,
on the paper.
Do you want to talk about it? Obviously, the president supports the DREAM Act, which is originally a Republican idea, oddly enough. We see this lately. Republicans abandoning their old ideas in favor of, I have no idea. So the DREAM Act was originally theirs, and the president supports it. And the president believes that that those who have been here, who have been brought to this country illegally, yes, but not at their own volition, should be able to become American citizens by going to college or becoming a member of the U.S. Armed Forces. We believe, obviously, that that is the right approach. We also think it's funny that Republicans, that this is essentially, in fact, Rick Perry got a little bit of heat from it during the Republican primaries when he talked about this issue. The state of Arizona and the state of Texas have their own DREAM Act. This is just something that we want to expand to the entire nation. Do you want to?
Just to point out, this plan is not amnesty. This plan is actually a way forward. This is to close a loophole when it comes to people who were born in this country, who knew nothing about their home country, due to whatever conditions they were brought here, to find a way to actually integrate with American society. And any other solution that has been brought forward has been shot down as a way to give leeway to those who have broken the law. Now, I understand this issue is very controversial, especially for those who have their own immigrant stories. In fact, even I do. But we can understand and reach the idea that if we do not do something about these people, then we're going to have about, by 2030, we got about, say, about 6 or 8 million. But we're going to have a lot of people without registration who are about 30 and 40 years old, paying the Social Security, and will not be receiving it.
Right. When it comes to immigration, this is a big problem, and the president's only proposal in the last 4 years is try to get a DREAM Act by executive order, is what they're calling it. But really it came from a legislative proposal by Senator Marco Rubio. And it's something that Republicans support if it's passed according to the Constitution, which is move it through the houses of Congress, send it to the president's desk for a signature. Don't try to short-circuit the legislative process by executive order. Now, this is just a tiny solution to a huge problem. If Mitt Romney is elected president, that's our only chance to get real, comprehensive immigration reform, like we nearly got in 2006.
10 seconds.
I also think it's very interesting that President Obama promised that he would have comprehensive immigration reform in 2008 and then absolutely failed. And the media has absolutely, except for Univision, has ridiculously ignored the issue. But
we can move to another question. bringing it back home to education and to college students like ourselves. As a 22-year-old soon-to-be college graduate, which candidate will benefit me the most in regards to the jobs and the economy? And I'm sure you're going to say Mitt Romney, so tell us why.
Well, right now, the unemployment rate for people just getting out of college is about 50%. And that's unthinkable. I mean, I'm a senior, so this keeps me up at night a little bit. And so what we're looking at is, two candidates with two radically different visions for where they want to take the American economy in the next 4 years. With Obama, you can sum up his plan for the next 4 years with 4 words. And what are they? Oh, no. More of the same. I'm having a senior moment. And with Mitt Romney, you have an actual plan to create jobs.
Well, I think it's also important. I like to deal with examples and facts and figures. If you look at the Affordable Care Act, a very specific portion of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, says that every employer that has over 50 employees has to provide health care to their employees unless they're going to face some kind of huge tax or penalty. So what does that do? That says that every small business, if they're going to expand, are going to expand at 49 and stop hiring. So on top of all of the uncertainty that Obamacare produces, it not only produces uncertainty, but it also limits the amount of job creation that can happen in our economy. And so I think it's very important to look at the two candidates. And are you going to re-elect a man who says that this is a good idea, that we should limit small businesses, which employ half of Americans, by the way? Or should we look at a man who wants to repeal it and have a bipartisan approach in Congress and Senate? Again, it all goes back to that. Barack Obama has never had to work with anybody but his own party. Mitt Romney and an 80% legislature in Massachusetts did. And he did a good job. Thank you.
I suppose Mitt Romney did such a good job, and that's why he only served one term and left with approval ratings in the 30s. He was not a very popular governor. Regarding this idea that Mitt Romney is going to be bringing about change, you're right, he is going to change policies. He's going to change policies that essentially got us into this mess. Whether it's you want to talk about deficit or debt, these are the same policies. You want to talk about foreign relations, this is the same guy this is the presidential candidate who has asked so many Bush appointees to serve on his foreign policy advisory board. And then you want to talk about, warmongering and then point fingers at the president. I think it's a startling point that Mitt Romney would pick all of these people who got us into these dreadful wars in the first place.
And just one quick point to add on the job numbers. If we're looking at the current report, the job numbers are getting better. Yes, unemployment is still high. It's not where we want it to be, but more jobs are being added.
Sure. Yes. I think it's very interesting that that they bring up that he didn't. It's true. He did leave office with a 30% approval rating, but he was also a Republican in Massachusetts. I think that's very important to bring up. And if you want to bring up polls and statistics, why not bring up the fact that over half of Americans do not want Obamacare as it is passed? I think that's a very key issue, that he legitimately rammed this down our throats without the American people's approval. Thank you.
Well, first of all, Obamacare was passed through Congress, and since Congress is elected to represent the people, I think it's fair to say that the American people did have some say in how it was created. But to bring it back to the Affordable Care Act, I talked about in the opening statements how the Democrats are trying to make the necessary investments to move our economy forward. So the Affordable Care Act creates jobs. Investing in infrastructure creates jobs. Improving manufacturing creates jobs. Bailing out the auto industry and saving the entire auto industry creates jobs, or it saves jobs. So the president is doing things to protect jobs.
All right, moving on to another domestic policy issue.
Just a note on the investments. When it comes to investing, Obama doesn't pick winners and losers. He just picks the losers. Look at his track record in investing. This green energy stuff, Solyndra, all of these other companies going out of business and taking our money with it.
Up there, 15 seconds.
I think the auto bailout picked winners. I don't really see how helping create or save 1.2 million jobs in the American Rust Belt is picking losers. Okay.
Jeep moved to China and Chrysler went to Italy.
We're going to have to stop it there. Moving on to another domestic policy issue, and one that probably carries a lot of weight on this campus within the LGBT community. What are the differences between both of the candidates on rights for the LGBT community? 2 minutes per.
I think it's obvious. A president, the first sitting president to finally endorse same-sex marriage, a president who signed into law the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, a president who refuses to defend DOMA in courts, versus Mitt Romney, who either is incredibly silent about the issues or is arguing with Ted Kennedy about who's more pro-gay marriage. Or the differences are quite obvious. Mitt Romney takes the same old Republican approach. And honestly, I find that really disappointing. And that's, being a member of the LGBT community myself, this is one reason why I do not want Mitt Romney in the White House. Yeah, go ahead.
And I think that one thing that you can find on Mitt Romney's website is whether or not he's had this stance in the past, and both our candidates have changed some of their stances, but Mitt Romney now is an advocate for the traditional family. And I think when you're saying that two parents shouldn't be allowed to raise a child based on their sexual orientation, or even in some ways insinuating that single-parent households aren't going to produce as successful children as Mitt Romney sort of did in one of the debates, I'm not going to accuse him directly of that. I think that you can see a lot about a candidate's character based on those beliefs. So I don't think that any of us want to be living in a country where we're telling parents that they won't be successful in raising their children based on their sexual orientation.
Give it to them.
A minute to respond.
So, as far as, once again, that was completely wrong. Where Mitt Romney's personal stance on gay marriage is that he supports the traditional family unit as part of his religion. What he would like to see is that again, whatever states want to do, for them to deem, what they want to be as marriage. You've already seen it with Virginia. You've seen it with North Carolina. New Jersey, it's going to come up in the election for New Jersey by a referendum. New York has obviously seen the other way. But Mitt Romney has said that should the states not decide at all and this become a federal issue that comes before his desk, he would take the power to decide. But he's not going to take the power to decide because states are deciding for themselves.
I also think it's also very, very important to note that when Barack Obama had a Democrat-controlled Congress and Senate, he did nothing about this issue. He did nothing about the marriage equality issue. This is nothing but pandering in an election year. 6 months out before he needs to be reelected, he suddenly changes position. And as a member of the LGBTQ community, I stay on this stage representing Mitt Romney because it pisses me off that somebody would do that and try and pander to my vote. Like I'm some ignorant voter that would do it just because of gay marriage.
Hold on one second. I remind the people debating on the stage that the views that you're expressing are that of the candidates. Please refrain from.
But I don't understand pandering.
I really don't think it's pandering when Barack Obama was advocating same-sex marriage when he was in the Illinois State Senate. Agreed, he changed his mind because that was almost 20 years. That was 15 years ago. It wasn't a very popular idea back then. I think it's also very important to note that, agreed, I don't think that the federal legislature, that Congress should be doing anything about same-sex marriage. Honestly, this is an issue for the Supreme Court to decide. And they've already decided that marriage is in fact a right. And denying that right to gay and lesbian couples is a violation of their constitutional rights. Period.
Would you guys like 35 seconds?
Of course. He's right that he did. Barack Obama did talk about it in the 2008 election. When he was running for Senate, and that's because he was running against a man named Alan Keyes. Alan Keyes is the most bigoted man in the United States, clearly. And Alan Keyes made it a campaign issue in order to get the Democrat vote in Illinois. He gave that position. Then when he was running for president, he changed it again. And now when he's running for re-election, he changed it again. So do you really want a president who does not offer real hope and change, who's not going to bring you forward? I'd rather be forewarned than move forward with that kind of policy. Thank you.
I believe I said Senate, not Senate.
He changed it. Oh, sorry. He changed it with state Senate and Senate. He was originally in favor of it. Like 15 years ago.
Then why did he change his position?
Because it wasn't a popular issue at the time.
Let's leave it there, please.
So human rights are only a
Excuse me. Michael, please. Moving on to another, contentious domestic policy issue, and this is an issue that is important to a very key demographic in this election, and that's the women vote. So, what are the candidates' individual views on Planned Parenthood and women's health issues at large? And this one, I believe, is for you guys. 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Well, in regards to Planned Parenthood, we want to eliminate all federal funding for it. We don't believe taxpayer money should be used to fund abortions, which is contrary to the Democratic Party platform. They do not care about the right of conscience at all. When it comes to the issue of abortion, Mitt Romney opposes abortion except in cases of rape and incest, and will not use that, though, as a litmus test for his Supreme Court justices.
We all live in this area. We all listen to the radio, and Obama has said that Romney has declared the war on women because he wants to get rid of your right to contraception. But here are the facts, people. Griswold v. Connecticut, 1965, almost half a century ago, the Supreme Court said that women have a constitutional right to contraception. That is not an issue. The issue is whether or not who pays for it. Obamacare forces religious institutions to pay for contraception. And the whole issue is, in our Constitution, the first right we are given is the right to religious freedom. Whether or not a religious institution should be able to, or should be forced to pay for something that they don't believe in. And so the issue is not about the right to contraception. The issue is not about women's health rights. It's about who pays for it. Whether you pay for it individually with your health insurance company, or whether or not you're forcing other people to, using taxpayer money or through the Affordable Care Act.
And on many occasions, the president of Planned Parenthood has come out and said that they can deal without the federal funding. It's only 3% of their budget. They can function very well. He's not saying that let's end Planned Parenthood, period, end of story, and burn their buildings down. Let's end their funding, and Planned Parenthood can run however they want, and let the states decide if they want to continue to fund Planned Parenthood.
1 minute.
Okay, so first of all, there's this thing called the Hyde Amendment, which says that no federal funding can actually be used to directly fund abortions. So with that out of the way, the president's stance on Planned Parenthood is that he's supporting an institution that not only has family planning and contraception, and yes, does provide only 3% of their budget to abortions, but also focuses on things beyond that. They're focusing on medical issues. Birth control is prescribed for 56% of the population for medical reasons. And in addition to that, Planned Parenthood also provides cancer screenings, pap smears that are discounted. And so the president, by protecting Planned Parenthood, is protecting the health and safety of women. But my class is bad.
I would like to go back to the issue of the Affordable Care Act and the so-called religious violation of violation of religious liberties. In the late 80s, the early 90s, there was a Supreme Court decision called Employment Division of Oregon v. Smith, where Antonin Scalia wrote that no organization, no person will be exempt from a generally applied law because of their own religious exemptions, or because of their own religious objections. This is Antonin Scalia. Catholic.
as we saw with Justice Roberts, sometimes generally good judges make really bad decisions. All right, going back to your assertion that the Hyde Amendment prevents federal funding from going to abortion, the issue here is fungibility. This money is all really going into one big account. By the federal government paying for some of Planned Parenthood's activities, they're freeing up the other funds to be used for abortions. These people are the largest abortion providers in the U.S., over 1.3 million abortions a year, and it's utterly disgusting that you want to force us to pay for that.
So again, as I said in my last little spiel, Planned Parenthood, 3% of their budget goes to abortion. So taking away all that funding, just if you're anti-abortion, that's obviously going to be harming women. But also, the president is also a pro-choice president. He believes that women should be able to make their own decisions about their own bodies, whether it be rape, incest, or for other reasons. So that's the position that we support, because we believe that women are smart enough to make their own decisions about their body, not the state.
I'll give you 15 seconds and we'll give them 15.
I'd just like to point out the president's not only pro-choice on abortion before birth, but also after as well, as his vote in the Illinois Senate is evidence of.
He was the only, as Newt Gingrich pointed out, he was the only state senator that came out and supported infanticide as a state senator. And as far as 3% goes, in fiscal year 2011, Planned Parenthood had approximately 365,000 abortions. That's almost 1,000 a day. At what number do we actually look at what is a genocide and what's not?
That was about 30 seconds, so we'll give you 30 seconds.
Okay, so again, we support a pro-choice candidate. We support women being able to make their own decisions, and we understand that there are going to be people who have religious objections to this or moral objections to this, but we support the candidate who is allowing women to make that choice for themselves, and we support the organization that is allowing women to make that choice, but is also helping improve women's health care and family planning services for the nation. I don't know if you guys have anything.
All right, moving on to the next topic. You guys brought up the issue of Supreme Court justices, so I want to switch the topic to that. Affirmative action was once again argued before the Supreme Court. Affirmative action has been instituted in this country for over 30 years. What is your party's view, or Mitt Romney's, or is it the Democrats? What is President Obama's view on the issue of affirmative action, and what kind of Supreme Court justice would he appoint if granted the opportunity in a second term?
I believe, I'm obviously not sure about the president's opinion with affirmative action. I'm going to assume that he does support it. I think it's really important, though, that yes, this issue has come before the Supreme Court. Regarding the issue of affirmative action, back in the early 2000s, the Supreme Court case had another decision. It was called Grutter v. Bollinger. It was over at University of Michigan. And the justices decided, partially because of the amicus briefs that they received from corporations, from the military in particular, amicus briefs being in front of the courts, they're just briefs that help decide the issue, said that essentially if you overturn affirmative action, that you will be limiting our supply of diversity within not only the schools but also within employment. And that's very important. That's something that should probably be maintained. In her majority opinion for the court, Sandra Day O'Connor, who was nominated by Ronald Reagan, said that the need for affirmative action, while this is not a fixed amount, the need for it would end in about 25 years, would end in almost a whole generation. So I think what the standard that they applied then should be applicable and should remain applicable to present day. Do you think?
Just to go back to Myra, you say what type of Supreme Court justice President Obama should nominate for affirmative action. And I think just that in basic of, well, if President Obama would nominate a Supreme Court justice, I would think someone who would actually hold the issue true and understand what will it actually affect when you have the ratio of when does it come in for, say, the ability for one to move up in a workplace. Thank you. 1 minute, guys.
In regards to affirmative action, we just we don't like the idea of putting into law this notion that minorities can't perform at the same level and so need special treatment. This just goes against our beliefs that all people should be treated equally under the law. In regards to what sorts of justices Governor Romney would nominate, I think more justices in the constructionist, thoughtful mold set by Presidents Reagan, Bush Sr., and Bush. So justices along the lines of Kennedy, Roberts, Alito, Scalia, and Thomas. Definitely Thomas.
And that, in fact, and I'm sure the Democrats would like to hear this, is that every justice that has actually ruled Proposition 8 unconstitutional or has came out in favor of marijuana legalization has actually been appointed by a Republican president under Reagan or Bush Sr.
Okay. Do you?
Regarding
30 seconds.
Supreme Court justices, along the lines of name some justices, Kennedy, who's actually frequently regarded to as the moderate or the flip vote, Antonin Scalia, who, yes, is a constructivist or originalist or textualist, however you want to read into it, really doesn't believe that there is an actual right to privacy in the Constitution. Yeah. This was a man who, a few months ago, made an incredibly odd comment about sodomy. And who wrote in, it was a case called Bowers v. Hardwick. I just want to bring this up. Essentially said that you don't have the right, that these laws are valid, that these laws can infringe on your right to have relations within your own bedroom.
We're going to stop it there. That was about 43 seconds, so we'll give you 40.
I just wanted to comment. I'm a little surprised you would take offense, or, not like Scalia, considering you cited him like 2 questions ago.
Okay, let's just leave that there. You still have time if you'd like to. Yeah. You still have time if you'd like to make another comment. We can move on. All right. Moving on to the issue of energy, something that's come up a lot in the recent weeks. This comes from one of our audience members. Nuclear power is easiest and the cleanest way to get energy independence. Why won't each candidate push for it? And I just want to begin this with you guys.
Well, the answer is we will push for it. It's part of our all of the above energy approach to getting North America energy secure, along with developing oil, coal, renewables. The main issue, of course, with the nuclear is we have got to develop them very safely. I think we can do that, and really we just need to streamline the permitting process, because we haven't had nuclear power plants come on board in a very long time in this country.
Again, I just think this comes down to who you can trust. 4 years ago, when Barack Obama was running for president, he, would endorse this all-of-the-above plan. Yet, 4 years later, leases and permits to drill on federal lands is down by 50%. And so, I think these kinds of things are very important, because going forward, we need to have a president that has an all-of-the-above approach. We have a governor and a state legislature in Virginia that, ran on let's drill way off the coast of Virginia and bring down the price of gas. Let's start building more refineries. Let's start giving more permits. Let's start doing these things. Instead of giving billions upon billions of dollars to failed green energy programs that do not create jobs and that do not stimulate our economy. And so I think with an all-above energy program, which you can find on mittromney.com, you can find that the all-above plan not only reduces our energy costs, but it creates jobs and stimulates our economy.
You still have time. 15 seconds.
We're done.
Okay. 1 minute.
Just to start off, President Obama supports nuclear power. The reason why it hasn't gone into effect is more of a question of the free market rather than the president's policy. For one, I think the real reason is natural gas is cheaper, cleaner, and it's domestic. And for one, domestic energy in the United States is up. In fact, almost doubled. And we will also lay our reliance on foreign oil is actually, for once, below 50%, as it was going about almost 60% in 1996. So I would say the president's energy policy is working. Now, Michael.
Regarding failure rates and DOE department loans, oddly enough, the failure rates of loans within the energy department regarding green energy to businesses who are starting green energy businesses is at 8%, which is the same rate of businesses that failed when Mitt Romney was at Bain Capital, disemboweling companies and ruining people's lives.
We're going to have to stop you there. We'll give you 30 seconds.
Well, he said the president's energy policy is working. Well, the price of gas has doubled since he took office. If that's a sign that it's working, I really hope it doesn't really take off working, because that's really bad. And he mentioned that oil and gas production's doubled. Well, that's happened on private lands, which is fine, except the federal government has also cut the number of leases in half for public lands. And we could get much more production if we would open up those lands to exploration.
We're going to have to end it there. Did you guys want to take 30?
You can go to Political Fact and check for the facts in the president's policy, that it's in fact up, and regardless of anything, I like to say, Mitt Romney's plan. If he can say he can lower gas prices, I would like to see him walk on water next for his next magical trick. Thank you.
All right. This is going to be the last question before we go into closing statements. If you want to take the time after this question, at the very beginning.
It's 10 seconds. All right. The price is going to come down as the supply increases. Supply and demand, Econ 103.
This one is going back to one of the major issues of this election cycle, and that's jobs in the economy. And a lot has been talked about jobs being outsourced overseas. Both candidates have said that the other one has done this and that. So how does your candidate plan on bringing more jobs from abroad back to the United States? And I believe is it you guys this time? Or yeah, it's the college Republicans.
Well, part of how we're going to do that is bring down our corporate tax rate. Right now it's at 35%. That's the highest in the industrialized world. Canada's 15%. So, if you're a business in Europe looking to relocate to North America, look at the two countries side by side. Canada obviously wins. How we're going to bring that tax rate down is we're going to close deductions and loopholes so that it's deficit neutral, but that it's simpler, flatter, fairer. And that will also have the effect of bringing in the money that our corporations have stashed away off overseas, because our tax climate is so bad, they keep them in foreign accounts. We're going to bring over $1 trillion home to America that way to invest in new businesses and new infrastructure.
You still have a minute if you'd like it. Good. All right. Going over to you guys.
Regarding corporate tax rates, obviously, yes, corporations do frequently complain about how high the rates are. Yet most big corporations actually receive large subsidies from the government, including big oil. We essentially pay them, I think it's about $4 billion every year in subsidies. And then they're going to complain about tax rates when they're receiving money from the government. Go ahead.
And to expand a little bit on President Obama's plan to bring jobs back to the United States, again, making the necessary investments to spur innovation, to spur development in this country, that's going to bring jobs back to this country. What the president's focus on is making sure that, yes, we're cutting the debt, but we're also investing in our education system and in our technology and development programs, so that, as he said in the State of the Union, that we're winning the future, that we're bringing jobs back.
30 seconds.
On the point of corporations not really paying that much in tax, that's true. GE, whose CEO is the head of President Obama's Job Council, pays nothing in taxes. This is what political connections get you with this administration. Also, you mentioned the break for oil companies. It's actually about $2.8 billion, not $4 billion, and it's an accounting treatment that's been in place over 100 years. We're open to getting rid of that $2 billion transfer to oil, but if we can also get rid of the $98 billion transfer to green energy.
I really think it's ridiculous that you would imply that the president is handing out really low tax rates to big corporate people because they're on some board or something. These are tax rates that have been established by Congress. That's factually inaccurate.
Congress sets the rates, but the Treasury Department collects them and deals with them. And also, as another point in this president's cronyism, the guy who was the head of Solyndra is one of the biggest fundraisers for your guy.
10 seconds, sir.
I really don't have anything to say.
Okay. That does it for the question. So based off of the coin flip, we're going to move into our closing statements for both candidates, and we're going to start with the George Mason University Democrats.
So again, we want to thank everyone who helped put on this debate. We had a lot of fun, I think, and I hope that the College Republicans had fun. And all of you should vote on Tuesday if you are eligible, if you are registered. Again, we promote the president's agenda, Senator Kaine and Representative Connolly, because we want the country to move forward, and that's not just rhetoric. And I hope that what we've talked about today shows it's not about hope and change. It's not just about the word forward. It's about real policy that promotes reducing the debt, but also making investments in our future. It is important to reduce the debt, but we can't just stop spending on domestic programs, because that's not going to help us be innovative. It's not going to help us grow. So we hope that you'll vote for a ticket that promotes equality, that does promote financial responsibility. And we know that there have been mistakes, there have been things in the administration that have not been perfect, but we are confident that the next 4 years we'll start to see change in addition to the change that we've seen in the past 4 years. So, do you think that's it?
I do not.
Follow us at GMU Dems.
2 minutes.
Again, I'd just like to thank George Mason Student Government, Mason Votes, Alpha Phi Alpha for putting this event together. I know a lot of work has gone into this event. And I think most importantly, I'd like to thank the Democrats for participating as a counterweight to this. I think when we move forward, we need to look at which direction do we want our country to go into. We have a man who had no record to run on 4 years ago, and now that he has a record, he can't run on it. When it's energy, he did not do an all-of-the-above approach. The investments he made were utter failures. Education, he has not given the money to the classrooms to help the children. This money went to the teachers' unions. From Benghazi, we had the president go on in front of the United Nations and on 6 different occasions falsely lie to the world and say that it was because of a YouTube video. With Fast and Furious, we have a president who thinks that American citizens shouldn't have fully automatic weapons, but gave them to Mexican drug cartels. This is not just an economic issue anymore. This is an issue of life and death. And I think that this Tuesday, I really do hope that you take the opportunity and go to the polls and vote. Go to his website, mittromney.com, look at his issues, look at what he stands for, and make an informed decision.
4 days from now, November 6th, we'll decide the course of the next 4 years in this country. And I know it's easy to be pessimistic with things like they are right now. But with Mitt Romney, we have someone who truly believes in America and has a big agenda to go with our big dreams. Really, it all comes down to leadership, and that's what he provides.
All right, and with that, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank the college Democrats, or the George Mason University Democrats, and the George Mason University College Republicans. If you can join me in giving them a round of applause. And with that, I just have a couple more announcements before we all get off stage. So I need to stand.
How about a big hand for Shane Smith and Phil Eversgata, who did a wonderful job as timekeeper and moderator.
So once again, I want to thank everybody who had a hand in putting this on today, and thank you for inviting me to come and moderate. It was a fun experience. I've never done that before. I just wanted to say on behalf of Mason Votes, George Mason University's Office of Student Media's political news outlet, this Tuesday, as we all know, is the big election day. George Mason's Office of Student Media, led by Mason Votes, will be putting on a live election results show. We're trying to base it similar to what CNN and all the big networks do. We just won't have all the cool, fancy technology, obviously, but we do invite you guys to come out. It'll be right here in the JC atrium from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. You can watch us live on connecttomason.com, masoncablenetwork.com, and if you don't want to come to the JC atrium and want to watch it in your room, if you have a TV, it's on campus television channel 231. Jake would kill me if I got that wrong. So we just wanted to throw that out there. Please visit our website at masonvotes.gmu.edu. You have a couple of more days to make an informed decision, and we like to think that our website can provide students with that kind of an opportunity to check out where the candidates stand. So once again, that's Tuesday night, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. here in the Johnson Center atrium. And once again, thank you to both the Democrats and the Republicans for a very intriguing conversation tonight. Thank you. We're done?
We done?